Well, Tesla's earnings were once again not the best, and outside of the Tesla bull, I'm not sure anyone liked their earnings completely. It wasn't a disaster by any stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't really good either. So the question becomes, are we getting more of a beatdown? And if so, is it prudent to actually sell the stock and wait for the stock to fall further and buy again? Or do we basically need to go all in right now because Tesla is getting ready to rocket to the moon? Well, let's discuss all that today, talk about the fallout from the earnings. Just make sure you like the video if you like getting the truth without the hype. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, guys. You guys are going to get the truth on these earnings. All right, so we actually listened to the call in real time there in my group. We had a big crowd there. We answered all the questions. We got into all the nitty gritty with everything that was said. Obviously, we had some time before the earnings because, Tesla is notoriously late to start their earnings call. So we had plenty of time there to go through the numbers and everything else that was in the initial package that they gave to us, and then kind of went through the earnings call in real time there as it went through. And the earnings flash sale for my group is live right now and getting ready to expire. If you want to watch earnings calls with me, you want to buy and sell alerts in real time, you want to get all the different earnings breakdowns, be able to ask me questions about the earnings on our live Q&As or right there in the Discord, be a part of the best 6, 7, and 8-figure Discord out there, see my complete watch list with price targets, take 5 courses for free, be able to jump on our free coaching, be able to use our stock analyzer tool. Guys, there's so much involved in the membership. Make sure you take advantage of the flash sale before it expires. All right, so we don't have an hour here, so we can't rehash everything, but I'm going to give you guys the top 4 highlights from the earnings call that I personally feel are the highlights there. And we'll get into each one, and then we'll talk about what this means for Tesla stock in terms of the stock price, and we'll talk about what to do with Tesla stock. So highlight number 1, Nvidia is the big winner overall again. Well, we've heard it once again this earnings season that basically everybody is giving praise to Nvidia. Even Elon gave praise to Nvidia as well, basically saying, hey, they've got our money for the foreseeable future. They got something everybody else is trying to catch up to. And it's just kind of one of those deals. We may think about Tesla being maybe one of the leaders in AI in the future there, but in terms of current state, and more importantly, in terms of drawing in revenue off of your AI, Nvidia clearly is in the lead in regards to that. And it's just kind of one of those odd things to where once again, this earnings season, we are seeing multiple big tech companies praise a particular tech company. Obviously, there's some gamesmanship there with trying to get your chips faster or, maybe getting a little bit more preferred pricing, which I don't think anybody's getting. I actually think the exact opposite. I think Nvidia may be raising the prices even more because they know these big tech companies have billions of dollars in money to spend. And they can just afford it. So they're going to continue to raise those prices. So that to me is a huge boon in terms of Nvidia being one of the big winners of AI. Now, in regards to where Nvidia stock goes, who knows? But when you hear that sort of talk on any sort of earnings call, it tells you that they are going to be the leader here, at least for the foreseeable future, for the next year or so in regards to people wanting those chips, people that are needing those chips. Of course, eventually that will change at some point in time. But for right now, boy, they're still in the lead, and you're still seeing them get mentioned on earnings calls, and you saw it mentioned right here on Tesla's earnings call. I know a lot of folks think Dojo's coming along and there's going to be some great things there, but clearly it's not anytime soon, or else he would not still be mentioning Nvidia in the way that he is talking about Nvidia on the earnings call there. So that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind there, that although I know a lot of folks have high hopes for Dojo, my hopes really aren't that high, and especially if you go off his guidance from the beginning of the year in regards to Dojo, there really isn't a whole lot there. It basically looks like whatever the heck Nvidia's figured out, they haven't quite figured out yet, or at least can't keep up with whatever the heck Nvidia is doing there in the future. And the best course of action is still to continue to go with Nvidia for the time being. Although it also kind of sounded like it's getting kind of expensive too in regards to Nvidia. So I don't know. You can kind of read into that thing multiple ways depending upon where you want to take it, bullish or bearish. But it's absolutely something that's worth mentioning in regards to the stocks themselves. Highlight number 2, new models coming in 2025. Now, Elon actually mentioned a couple of new models coming out there in 2025. Now, he got asked about it. Of course, he would not give specifics. He wanted to wait for the events and some other future things in order to announce those events. And I don't disagree with that. I agree with, hey, you don't want to say something too early. You don't want to overpromise, underdeliver, especially on an earnings call. Save it for the event. That's exactly what it's there for. Now, I will say this in regards to a cautionary tale with these particular models. How many are we getting? And more importantly, how many of them are refreshes versus actual new models there? So that right there's kind of 2 important distinctions there. And then, of course, the guidance with all those. That will all come in the future there. But it was exciting to see that he was at least willing to commit to, hey, we got a couple new models coming next year. Just wait for the announcement, wait for the events. They're going to be there. We kind of thought about one. Now we're hearing it may be multiple. Again, no specifics yet, so we're just kind of left in the balance here, and I agree with leaving us here in the balance. If you're going to do an announcement about them, some sort of big formal announcement about them, I like that strategy better than saying it on an earnings call like this, so we can get into the details. They can give us everything that they need to give us in order to make it an appropriate event to appropriately give us what we need in regards to what's going on with those particular vehicles. So that right there is something that's exciting. It absolutely was mentioned multiple times here on this earnings call. But again, we got to wait until those events to see exactly what the details are. And again, I hope that they are completely new models and the refreshes are going to somehow differentiate themselves enough to where they're able to kickstart some of the growth engines within Tesla again with the Model 3, Model Y specifically there. I won't say they're growing stale, but you definitely see sales starting to stagnate. Still going fine. But in regards to kind of giving it that next boost up, hey, that right there would be great if we're getting some sort of a significant refresh or a new model altogether to kind of just create a whole new avenue of revenue for Tesla. Now, it's going to be a huge disappointment if they're all basically refreshes except for Robotaxi, whatever the heck that's going to be. That will be a huge kind of not necessarily a downgrade, but it's definitely something Wall Street's expecting a lot more. I think us as investors are expecting more. And so if we don't get anything beyond a refresh and a Robotaxi of some sort, I think that will be one of those things that definitely kind of tempers that excitement that could be around a new model coming around the corner there. So just something I want you guys to keep in mind there in regards to this. Highlight number 3, Optimus is a long way off. Now, guys, you got to keep in mind with Optimus, they are shooting for something big that's never been done before. This isn't like, well, nobody's ever scaled EVs like this or anything else like that. This is something completely new altogether, and it's going to take time. I know folks get excited whenever he says something like, hey, we could see by the end of next year production going in and these, these particular models being working right here in Tesla, right here on the Tesla floor. And then by 2026, they might be available to other customers. But then when kind of pressed for details, in the actual Q&A session, they didn't really have a lot of details in regards to what all that means, how it's going to work, who those potential customers are, and everything else like that. So when I think about this sort of thing, especially given the fact that it still can't do a whole heck of a lot, and we've kind of got a long way to go to that other side to where it's a viable worker within the workplace there, I personally think this is more of, hey, we could see them in Tesla factories doing some basic task at the end of next year. And then, of course, in 2026, we see it move over to these other companies, and those other companies may be other Elon-led companies. Think SpaceX, think things of that nature. Think more proof of concept and trying to prove out that concept versus full-scale production, hitting the bottom line, and creating profits for the company there. I just don't see any tangible way we get there, even by 2026, where we're seeing significant hits to the bottom line. Now, of course, I win if we do because I own a lot of Tesla shares. But it's not something, especially given the way they kind of answered the questions, I just don't think we are there yet in regards to Optimus. Again, it is something that is very, very forward reaching. They're trying to not just make it purpose built like Amazon robots are, like a lot of other robots that are already all over factories. They're trying to make something completely different altogether. And it's just going to be incredibly hard. And for me, something that's going to be hitting the floor next year, Elon didn't give us any tangible guidance towards this. So this could be one of those Elonisms where he says it's next year and, well, it's kind of next year, but kind of not at the same exact point. That's why I said maybe it's doing some menial tasks there in their actual factories in very limited numbers. And then maybe they'll scale it out and use it at other Elon-led businesses further. That to me is at least the way I felt about that whenever they spoke about that. And we were getting into specifics. If it was something that was really going to be tangibly working in their factories, and that right there should create something that you can guide to in regards to reducing costs, reducing overhead, some other things of that nature, especially given what he has promised the robot will be able to do. If we're to that point where it can do that, it's absolutely going to reduce costs in the factories there. So if they're able to put these full scale out in the factories next year, that's something you could tangibly guide to, but they didn't this time around. So for right now, I just kind of think this is far off into the future and it's something they're still working on. They're making progress. It's going well, but it's not there to where we're going to see anything tangible to that bottom line there, much less something that you can sell to the rest of the world outside of kind of Elon controlled companies there. So kind of keep that in mind. At least that's the way I took it. So for me, for now, there's not anything tangible that I can place a value on. Highlight number 4, clarity on licensing FSD to legacy auto. Now, you had to pay attention during the call in order to really catch this little bit of nuance here. Now, we did not get a name. He would not give up a name as to who he has talked to, who hasn't talked to, who's in talks, who's interested, who's not interested, or anything else like that. That's not what I mean in terms of clarity on licensing FSD. What we did get was a timeline inadvertently. Somebody asked a wonderful question that kind of got an answer out of it. Inadvertently, we got the answer from Elon, and that was if somebody licenses FSD from Tesla, how long would it take for them to actually implement the tools within the vehicle, the cameras, everything else, in order to be able to use FSD's software in order to run the system? And he basically admitted it would be a few years. They've got to put it on their product roadmap, then implement it. And just, when you're talking large scale manufacturing there, it's not as easy as just slap a few cameras on and go. It's a lot more involved in that. And he's obviously had high level discussions with those OEMs. So that's a positive right there. The fact that he's had that level of discussion to where he understands, hey, whenever we're able to do this, how long until you guys are actually able to implement it? He has a tangible answer to that. Unfortunately, he said that would take them a few years in order for them to actually do that. And that means, hey, we're a long way off. We're a minimum, in my mind, 5 years away from licensing FSD at all, assuming people want to do that and they're actually going to go EVs and electric in the future. You've already had some kind of drop out of the race. That's kind of the first piece. Second piece, you got to actually solve FSD, which I know everybody says is coming next year, but I've been hearing that for, 8, 9 years now, or whatever the case is. So we don't know, but you got to solve FSD. Then you got to go through the whole regulation piece, getting it all approved, getting all those other government type pieces in place, and then be able to negotiate and enter into a contract with an OEM. And then it has to hit their product roadmap, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case is, whenever they can implement that into their actual vehicles there. So when you think about all those things having to happen, and they have to happen sequentially, right? You're not going to sign up and license FSD if they have FSD if FSD hasn't even been solved yet, much less approved, regulatory approved, top to bottom. You're just not going to do that as an OEM because it's not worth your money, because it's a product you may not be able to use now. It may be a year away, maybe 5 years away. You don't know that. So you're not going to pay up front for something that could be, 1 year to 5 years or more away. Who knows at this stage? We don't know when FSD will actually be solved and then approved. So in terms of who, we got no clarity, but in terms of the timeline, we got clarity on the best case scenario for FSD. So good news there, we have some clarity, so we don't have to speculate as much about licensing FSD and what that could potentially add to the bottom line there. We have an answer in regards to timeline, and right now that timeline is a long ways off, and it's not something you can accurately predict at that stage. We'll have to wait and see as we get closer to there what that actually is. So in terms of it affecting the valuation right now, it doesn't have any material effect on the valuation as of right now. So when you kind of talk about these highlights here and you kind of look at the earnings and the numbers and everything else, this right here is the setup to where Wall Street just likes to beat down a stock. We saw it after earnings. We'll see how it continues to go over the next couple of weeks, but this is exactly the sort of setup where Wall Street likes to beat you into oblivion as a stock for at least a quarter. So the question becomes, do you actually sell and then try to buy it lower if that's what we think is going to happen? And so let's kind of talk about that a little bit. And then we'll talk about kind of what's the effect on the share price. So there are many reasons to sell, but there's two main questions or two main reasons why I would sell. And these right here are the biggies. These right here are the ones that I absolutely would sell if one of these two happen. So the first is a fundamental change in the business. Now for me, I don't see any fundamental change in the business this time around. I didn't have Optimus on my valuation. I didn't have Robotaxi on my valuation. I didn't have any of those sort of future things on my valuation. So there's no fundamental change for me. The fact that I now know that licensing of FSD, maybe, 5 years or more away, doesn't change my valuation any. We're still seeing the exact slowdowns that Elon told us about last October. So again, there's no fundamental change here in regards to my thesis with the stock. Everything is still moving along. Not great, not perfect, not as well as I want it to be, of course. But nonetheless, I don't see any significant fundamental changes with the business that makes me think, oh, wow, I need to get out of this stock and move my money into a different stock. I just don't have anything at that stage in regards to Tesla. And some other things that could cause that would be like, a regulation change of some sort, basically EVs being outlawed altogether or some sort of other hindrance like that, right? That right there could fundamentally change the business itself. And if Robotaxi happened to get banned, well, I never included that to begin with, so it doesn't break down the thesis for me. Now for you, if you have Robotaxi as the main reason why you want to own Tesla, and then Robotaxis are banned, or driverless driving or self-driving, FSD, whatever the case is banned or somehow hung up on a lot of things like that, and that right there is what you were basing your thesis on, okay, I can see that. But for me, I'm not basing my thesis on Tesla on any of those sort of things. Those are all kind of extras, cherries on top to me. So there's no fundamental change at this stage for me with Tesla. And the second reason is a hype run-up. Now look, let me kind of define this a little bit here, guys, because I agree. It was a hype run-up into the earnings based on pretty much nothing. There was nothing there. There was no reason behind it. It got significantly overvalued there. But that was not a crazy hype run-up like we've seen in the past. Yes, the multiple got well up over 100, but it wasn't up over 1,000 like it was in 2021. So that's what I mean by, a hype run. Tesla, for whatever reason, goes on crazy runs all the time like this, up and down. And what you've really got to do at that stage is just kind of control yourself, right? When the fear's high and that valuation starts to get cheap, that's when you need to buy. And then whenever it's running up and you're just kind of like, oh, everybody's excited about this thing in 5 years, or this thing that's coming in 10 years, or this thing we don't even know when it's coming. That right there is when you got to control yourself and understand, hey, it's overvalued. But it's not overvalued to a point that it's not within like an acceptable range of where Tesla normally goes. It's not this crazy, hey, I think we're pulling 5 years worth of revenue and profits forward. That's kind of what we got in 2021, 2022. That's not what we're getting right now in regards to Tesla stock. So for me, yes, it's still trading rich. Yes, it's still expensive. Even despite this drop, it's still trading a little bit rich, but it's not crazy rich to where I feel like I need to get out of the stock because I pulled a lot of stuff forward. I just don't feel that need yet. So for me, I'm not going to sell at this stage. It has not hit this crazy hype run. Now, if it would have ran after earnings and we were up over $300 right now or something like that, well, at that stage, that would have changed my mind, especially with these earnings. It would have maybe forced my hand a little bit. I definitely would have had to do a lot more analysis there to really get to the right answer with that, which is, of course, one of the reasons why joining the group is great, because you could walk through that with me in real time, because that would probably be something we would do in real time over the course of a week or two, trying to determine what the right move is and why, more importantly, to make sure we make the right decision. But for right now, the price isn't close to that. Obviously, it's moving in the opposite direction. So I think we're safe from a hype run at this stage. So if neither one of those two things happen, then at that stage, for me, as a long-term buy and hold investor, I just hold and I wait for opportunities to add to the stock. I don't see any reason to trade in and out and play trading games. You're going to lose. We have seen it repeatedly. We've seen that mistake repeatedly by big YouTubers, by small YouTubers, by professional investors, hedge funds, everybody else. It seems that every single time they lose eventually on those trades. There's no reason for it. That's the reason why traders underperform dead people. That's why you don't see guys like Warren Buffett and Peter Lynch and all the greats like that playing those sorts of games. You stay completely out of it because there's no reason for it. More importantly, there's going to be an impact on the stock price that we're going to talk about here in just a second in regards to where the stock price is going. But you don't want to be stuck trying to guess, because if somebody knew the actual answer to it with any sort of consistency, we would see trillionaire investors, but they don't exist, guys, and they don't exist for a reason. Don't fall for it when somebody says they got something or they have a system or a strategy or whatever. No, it doesn't exist, because until I see that trillionaire investor, I would know that that person is not able to do that, and they're just trying to sell you some fool's gold. So what does all this mean for the stock price? Well, there's good news and bad news, and we'll kind of start with the bad news there, because the bad news is it is actually more expensive after earnings than it was prior to those earnings. And that's from a valuation perspective, guys, and I'm not being bearish. I'm simply giving you guys the truth. Tesla got more expensive because until that EPS number improves significantly, Tesla is going to be expensive unless we get down to some real, well under $200 pricing. It's going to be expensive from a valuation perspective. So that right there is kind of the bad news with it. But there is good news as well. And that is, I think we are actually going to get some good opportunities here over the next quarter or so to add some shares at some nice prices. Now, not the best pricing ever or anything else like that. But when I look at it, Wall Street has, and I'm talking Wall Street traders here, they have nothing really to trade on here up until next quarter. And really, we're looking at October 10th now for the robo-taxi event. Maybe we'll get some run up there ahead of that. But in the meantime, right here, we're July. We got to slug through all of August, all of September, or at least part of September before that hype train for that event starts to happen there. And there's not a whole lot for these guys to go off of in regards to that. And they just add in the fact that, tech in general was running kind of rich to begin with. And we just might very well see some very nice pricing in Tesla coming forward, because there's just nothing for Wall Street to do in regards to running the stock up. So they're going to do Wall Street things and probably beat it down at this stage, which just means opportunity for us as investors. And the earnings flash sale for my group is live right now and getting ready to expire. If you want to watch earnings calls with me, you want to buy and sell alerts in real time, you want to get all the different earnings breakdowns, be able to ask me questions about the earnings on our live Q&As or right there in the Discord, be a part of the best 6, 7, and 8-figure Discord out there, see my complete watch list with price targets, take 5 courses for free, be able to jump on our free coaching, be able to use our stock analyzer tool. Guys, there's so much involved in a membership. Make sure you take advantage of the flash sale before it expires. And click this video here if you want to see exactly what I'm buying in this market. And click here to see my exact plan for this market. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.